Hi everyone, today we're learning how to play Namiji, the spiritual sequel to the famous Tokaido. This is not an expansion, but a brand new game, once again designed by Antoine Boza, illustrated by Nayad, and published by Funforge, who sponsored this episode. So all aboard, this time we're sailing along the coast of Japan. You may have already walked along the Tokaido road or be brand new to the series. It doesn't matter. In Namiji, you're invited on a brand new trip, a fishing trip south of the Japanese archipelago. In this game, players lead their boat at their own pace and strategically plan their stops to make the most out of their day at sea. Players score points according to the fish and crustaceans they get, the beautiful sea animals they'll spot, or even the offerings they'll give to the sea. At the end of the voyage, when everyone's back home, the player with the most points wins the game. To set up the game, place the game board at the center of the table. Individually shuffle the dock cards, the sacred rock cards, and the net tokens, and place them all on their respective section on the board. Then shuffle the fish tokens and place them face down on the board to form the school of fish. Put all the crustacean tokens, so the shrimps and the crabs, in the bag. Sort the panorama cards by type, dolphin, octopus, and whale, and by value, all the ones on top, then all the twos, all the threes, and so on and so forth. Place all three stacks on their respective places on the board. The three panorama bonus cards as well as the finish tokens can stay next to the board. Give each player a boat board of the color of their liking. Also give them a boat pawn and a score pawn of the same color. Randomly place the boat pawns along the starting dock. The score pawns are all stacked on the zero space of the scoring track. Finally, give everyone 4 offering figurines. They go on the boat boards on the indicated spots. Setup is done, all there's left to do is to decide on a direction for a game strip, clockwise or counterclockwise. In Namiji, players follow the same path on which they can only move forward, they're not allowed to backtrack. At their turn, player must move their boat to any free space ahead. They don't have to stop on the next available space, but can sail further along the route. When they stop, players harvest the benefit from the space they're on. We'll see what those benefits are in a minute. There are 2 important rules to remember. In Namiji, the last player on the path is always the one to play. This means that as long as a player stays behind, that player keeps playing. The second important rule is that most spaces on the board are single spaces. They can only host one player at a time. Some are double spaces though, but their second space is only available during 4 and 5 player games. The first player to hit such spaces always puts their pawn on the space closest to the route. If another player decides to stop there, this second player takes the space further from the track and is considered to be behind the first player when it comes to turn order. Now that this is clear, let's review the different spaces and their associated benefits. When you stop on a line fishing space, take a fish token from the school of fish on the board. You may take a face-up or face-down token. At the beginning of the game though, all fish tokens are face-down. If the fish you got doesn't suit you, you may release it. Just replace the token face up on the board. If you want to keep it, place it face up on your boat rack. There are some placement rules to follow and we'll talk about them in a moment. On top of taking a fish, also reveal face up a second fish token from the school of fish. The net fishing space lets you fish 2 identical fish at once. Draw the first token from the draw net pile and place it in your rack following the placement rules. Here again, if you don't like the fish you caught, just discard the token and put it back face down at the bottom of the draw pile. Now's probably the time to talk about those placement rules I've been referring to. The first fish, or the first net token, must always cover the upper left corner of your rack. The following fish must be placed next to at least another fish already in the rack. Diagonals don't count. Once placed, your fish stay there. You're not allowed to rearrange your rack. By itself, a fish is worth nothing. But complete a line or a column with only fish of the same color or of the same shape, and you'll score as many points as written on your board for this line or column. For instance, these 4 blue fish earn you 7 points, while these 3 fish of the same shape give you 4 points. You're supposed to move your score pawn on the score track each time you get points during the game, but don't worry, if you forget to move it, you can always take your time to recount everything at the end of the game. Coming back to the stops, you can always try to catch crustaceans. One by one, draw up to 5 crustacean tokens from the bag. Your hope is to draw as many shrimps as you can and to avoid crabs. You can draw 1 crab, that's not a problem, but if you catch a second one, you instantly lose everything you just got and the tokens must be put back in the bag. Thankfully, you may stop drawing crustaceans whenever you want. If you stop in time and don't catch a second crab, you can keep everything. All the tokens, shrimp and crab, are placed on your boat and are each worth a point. The whirlpool spaces, depicted by a paper boat, let you make an offering to the sea in order to get rid of a penalty you got from the beginning of the game. Everyone starts the game with a 15 points penalty, but by stopping at the whirlpool, you can decrease this penalty by placing one of your offering figurines at the center of the game board. Always take the topmost figurine from your boat board when you make an offering. At the end of the game, your penalty will be equal to the number shown by the topmost figurine still present on your board. Of course, if you got rid of all your figurines, you're totally free of any penalty. Panorama spaces let you admire magnificent sea creatures along the way. Dolphin, octopus, or whale, depending on the space you're on, take a card corresponding to the animal you're observing. If this is your first stop on such a space, take the card number 1 and score a point. Next time you'll take the section number 2 and score 2 points, and so on and so forth until you complete the said panorama. The dolphin panorama is made of 3 sections, the octopus panorama counts 4 sections, and the whale panorama has 5 sections. If you do the math, you can earn a total of 6 points thanks to the dolphins, 10 points with the octopus, and 15 points by completing the whale panorama. On top of that, the first player to complete one of those 3 panoramas gets a bonus card worth 3 points. You're not allowed to start the same panorama twice. In fact, once you complete a specific panorama, all the following spaces for that animal are not available to you anymore. The Sacred Rock spaces gives you the chance to get secret objectives to score more points. When you stop there, secretly draw 2 Sacred Rock cards. Choose one of them and replace the second one face down at the bottom of the draw pile. Sacred Rock cards' objectives are all different, and if you meet all the conditions at the end of the game, you earn points. For example, Big Game Fisher grants you 3 points if your rack contains at least 2 net tokens. Fisher Emeritus gives you 5 points if your rack is completely full at the end of the game. Agile Fingers is worth 4 points if you have at least 5 shrimp tokens, while Strong Fingers gives you 4 points if you have at least 3 crab tokens. I'll let you discover the rest of the cards by yourself. Finally, the last type of station is a bit particular. The docks are where everyone has to stop and wait for all the other players to arrive before moving again. When you reach a dock, you must choose the empty spot where you want to position yourself. In a 5-player game, all 5 spots are available, but in a 4-player game, only the first 4 spots remain open, while in a 2 or 3-player game, the first 3 spots are open. Your arrival order at the dock is very important because your boat placement choices will vary depending on when you get there. And of course, your boat placement will dictate in what position you'll leave when time comes to set sail again. Arrival order is also very important for another reason. Once everyone has reached the dock, the player closest to the route draws as many dock cards as there are players, plus 1. That player chooses 1 card and passes the rest to the next player in line, who does the same, and so on until everyone has a card. By doing so, the last player will always have a choice in between 2 cards. The card that is not selected is placed back, face down, at the bottom of the draw pile. Dock cards are all unique. Some are meals that offer straight up points at the end of the game, while others are special powers like the wind meal that lets its owner discard 2 offering tokens at once when visiting a whirlpool space. There's also a crab trap that lets you return to the bag the first crab you draw when looking for crustaceans, and thanks to the float you can catch 2 fish at once, but only if you take them amongst the face down tokens. You'll discover the rest of the dock cards by yourself. To recap, if placing yourself on the first spot of a dock gives you more cards to choose from, it also means you'll leave last. On the other hand, if you hit the last spot of the dock, you'll get fewer cards to choose from, but will leave first. That's a tough decision you'll have to make. There are 3 regular docks along the way, so 3 mandatory pauses to make during the game. The 4th dock represents the final stop. When reaching that final dock, players get a finish token that gives them a varying number of points depending on their arrival order. 7 points for the first one to arrive, 5 points to the second one, then 3, 2, and 1 point for the remaining players. Once everyone has arrived, it is time for final scoring. Everyone adds up to their actual score all the points they got from Sacred Rock's objectives met, then subtract the penalty shown by the topmost offering token still present on their boat. Once again, if they got rid of all their tokens, they don't incur any penalty. The player with the most points is the winner of the game. And in case of a tie, all tied players share the victory. Before letting you go, I need to mention a few extra rules for the 2-player game. In addition to the 2 players' boats, a 3rd neutral boat appears on the path. This neutral boat is always controlled by the player in the lead. Both players will therefore alternate controlling it. The neutral boat stops but doesn't interact with spaces. It doesn't fish and doesn't get points either. Its only purpose is to block players to reach certain spaces. At the dock, the first player draws 4 cards, just like in a 3-player game. And when the neutral boat is supposed to choose a card, just randomly discard one without looking at it. When the neutral boat reaches the final dock, discard the finished token it should have received. Apart from these few changes, the game plays as usual. And there you go, now you know how to play Namiji. So rig your boat, chart your course, and get ready to set sail on this beautiful journey. I'll be waiting for you on the arrival dock, ready to live another day to play another game by the shores of the Japanese Sea. Take care.